everyone, I'm Camilla. Welcome back to my channel Hasty Books. Today I'm jumping into my September wrap up. Oh wait, is there something that looks different this week? I did want to acknowledge that I did cut my hair last week. So from the last video you'll see I had very long hair. I've been, I guess, growing my hair obviously through the pandemic. At the height of it I didn't get my hair cut, and then earlier this year in January I decided I would donate my hair to charity which makes wigs for kids with cancer. And my hairdresser came last week and she cut the length of, as long as I could manage, the hair. I let it grow as much as I could, and now I have a creepy bag of hair that I still need to mail, and I have this cute bob which I really like. So yeah, I did want to acknowledge it before continuing with the video. But yes, I will accept all compliments, obviously. So September was a good month of reading, I think. A bit more, I don't want to say normal. Normal is such a bad word. But more acceptable reading month than over the summer. Summer I kind of went all out, and because I had much time off, I read a lot. So I read 12 books in September, which I'm very, very pleased with. And it did start slowly, but I think it's because I was reading a lot of book at the same time. And then it started kind of paying off later in the month where I was like finishing books and books and books. So very pleased with 12. Let's go into a bit of statistics. So out of the 12 books, I think about 50% were authors of color, which I'm quite pleased with. There was one male author. As you know, if you've watched my videos before, you know that that's a proportion that I appreciate. So one male author and 11 female or non-binary writers. Good. And there was one nonfiction only. And finally, the last thing I wanted to kind of separate was there was 5 audiobooks and 7 ebooks, which when I made this list, I realized that I read no physical books in September. And yet it's one of my goals to tackle this physical bookshelf because there are so many books I haven't read. But the next few months will be better. I will do better, I swear. She lied to herself. Okay. So these are the statistics, 12 books, very good. Let's go into the review. So the first book that I read was The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa, who was the only male writer of the month. It was translated from the Japanese, and it was really weird. I got this arc on NetGalley because it sounded really cool, like, oh, it's a cat and it's books and it's a bookshop. What could go wrong, And nothing did, but it wasn't what I expected. So I think I gave it maybe a 3-star because it just wasn't as cozy and interesting as I thought it was gonna be. So I thought it was gonna be maybe like a cat in a bookshop and people like really want to see it, so they come to the bookshop, and then the bookshop and the books were saved. But it was a magical realism and fantasy. It was literally a cat who spoke, who came into this bookshop that the main character had inherited from his grandfather, and was like, oh, I need your help with saving books. And it almost felt like a bit of like a video game where it was like defeating bosses. So it was like different stages of difficulty and like challenges that he got. What was really interesting about it is that it dived into the idea of what do we do with books and how does it prove that we love them or not? Like, how do we approach books? It was very like almost like philosophy book, the way that it was questioning these behaviors and the way that we approach books. And I think that's maybe something that it will resonate with a lot of people who love books and will read this and maybe either see a behavior that they do that's maybe a bit compulsive, or see like, oh yeah, like I love books so much, like I would not do this, or just find a different approach to it. So I think that's why I would recommend it. Then the second book that was an audiobook that I listened to. It was 10 minutes and 38 seconds in the Strange World by Elif Shafak. And I love this book. Oh my goodness. So I've actually started listening to the audiobook, I feel like it was last year or earlier this year. And the beginning is a bit harsh, and I don't know, I wasn't really in the mood, and I returned it. It was on my library app and I returned it, and thought about it recently, and I really wanted to read one of her books this year. So I picked it up again, and oh my gosh, yeah, it is so great. So the 10 minutes 38 seconds is actually about, it starts with, it's a sex worker who has been basically killed, and it's like the end of her brain activity, almost like the 10 minutes, but I feel like it's in slots of minutes at the beginning, and then it gets into seconds at the end, of like sense that reminds her of something. Then we fall into almost like a flashback of her life. So we see like the way that she was born, the way that she grew up, the structure that led her to becoming who she was. And then it also introduces us to like the different people. I think there's 5 people that are very important to her, and they become almost like a chosen family to her. And then the last part was just so amazing. It's where it's after her death and after they found her body, and it's about basically them trying to honor her. Oh, it was so touching and not intriguing, but really engaging. Like you just want to keep going and know what's happening. And I just really cared for all of the characters in this like chosen family. It was really great. I had a really favorite line, which was, like all foreigners, she carried with her the shadow of an elsewhere. And I just as a foreigner, I really like that line. Really struck me and I had to write it down. It's so good. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. They're not explicit, but there are some trigger warning for like child abuse and sexual abuse, so I would just mention that. But apart from that, I would like 100% recommend it. It was just so good. Then I listened to the audiobook The Story of Our Lives by Helen Warner. This was okay. So I received an ARC on that galley years and years ago. I think this came out in like 2017 or something. And I don't know what happened, but usually if I haven't been able to download it before it expires, or there's a problem with like the ARC, the online ARC, then I can't read it, and so I tell them I can't review this because I just can't access the file. So that happened because it was on my list of had not reviewed, and I saw it was on my library app, so I listened to the audiobook and I thought I'll just review it and, you know, raise my quota of reviews on NetGalley so it looks better. I think I would have enjoyed it maybe better 4 years ago. God, there was a lot wrong with this. It was very superficial look at this friendship between 4 women, and you follow them through like almost 20 years. Sometimes the time passes really quickly. It's like sometimes like the following year, and sometimes it's like multiple months in a row. So I didn't like that. It did like go through quite an array of experiences, like from miscarriages to domestic abuse to cancer to like everything basically, which then at some point I was just like, oh my goodness, this is like a soap opera. Everything that's bad is happening to these people, which I don't know, it just felt like too much to me. I wasn't really I guess in the mood for this, and I don't think I would recommend it because it didn't feel like it was a fun contemporary book. It didn't feel like it was a nice romance. It didn't feel like any of these things that would attract me. So that was my overall review, and I will move on to the next one, which was Passing by Nella Larsen. I thought I'd read this book before because we read excerpts from it when I was doing my master's. But I picked it up and I, read the whole thing, and it was really good. I really, really enjoyed it, especially because the narrator was so... you just couldn't trust her, and now I'm forgetting the word for like an untrustworthy narrator, but it was just so interesting. Even to the very end, it was just like you can't really root for her, but you do, and it's just this weird thing. And so it's really well constructed. And then as I was reading it, I then saw that I think it's coming out, like there's a movie coming out on Netflix. So I was like, oh, I can't wait to see it. It will be great. I've heard comments that this is what The Vanishing Half is based on, and a lot of people have preferred this. I've not yet read The Vanishing Half, but I will get there, and I really look forward to it. And I love Passing. I thought it was really good. It's really short, so big recommend from me. My next read was Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi, and okay, I really liked this book, but also didn't love it. It was weird because it was so well written. So that's why I'm gonna start. It was so well written, like from the first chapter, it's so easy to read. You get pulled along to the story. It was just so good. And I love Homegoing, Gyasi's first book. And so I had obviously high expectations for this book. but a lot of people said it was less good. I don't know if it was less good, but potentially for me, as the subject matter was definitely not touching me as much as I guess the first one had. Because of that, the second one, it's a lot about, God, it touches on so much. There's so many themes, and that was really interesting. And she does it so well, the way they're approaching things without being so obvious. And it looks a lot at like addiction and depression, and basically, I guess it's almost like why are maybe some people more likely to fall into these things. And she's looking, her main character is like a neuroscientist. I forget exactly what she is, but she's working with rats and trying to control some aspects of their brain to stop them from having these addictions. Because obviously her brother had died from an addiction, it's not spoiler alert, and her mother falls into depression. So yeah, so it's quite heavy on the subject. It touches a lot on faith, like a lot throughout the whole book. And I found that really interesting, although that's not things that I really enjoy reading about. And I didn't think that this book was too preachy about it, but I did find a little bit it was, because the main character at some point seems to feel a little bit superior because of her ability, let's call it that, to be really into science and also to, like, I guess, have faith. And I guess like up till the very end, she kind of deals with that, which was very interesting. But yeah, as I said, that's not a subject that interests me that much. Neither is the really addiction and kind of the brain and all that. But that said, I still really enjoyed it. It was really easy to read. Like, oh, she's such a good writer. I will read anything by her, honestly. Next is another easy one, actually. Well, not easy, but I read it really quickly. It was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. I'd actually also started this one. I'd read the first 2 or 3 chapters, I want to say earlier this year, and then I guess I don't know why, because I remember picking it up and one night and reading chapter after chapter and be like, I could just keep reading this book. And then I put it down and then read something else, and then my library hold expired, and then that's it. So I repicked it up in September, and you know, in the library app, they sometimes go and they're like, oh, this many people waiting. And I was like, it got to like 3 or 4 people waiting. And I still had like 20 days or 15 days with it. But I was like, oh, right. Wait to make me feel guilty. So I picked it up at night, one night, you know. And I was like, okay, I'll try to get to half of the book. And then by half, I just couldn't put it down. And I read till 1:30 in the morning. It was like a work night and everything. But I just could not put it down. And I was so hyped, actually, when I finished reading it. It's very fast-paced. It's really... there's so much to it. I feel like I don't even know how to talk about it, but I loved it. I really, really loved it. The characters aren't very pleasant. Like, everyone is like a bit in the wrong. But I think that to me showed like the diversity of being, and also of like the nuances of people. And I really adored that. And like, I didn't hate any of the characters, but also I didn't, you know, love any of them. But I don't know, there was something really real about this book and really engaging, and that's definitely why I'm recommending it. Next, I read Medusa by Jessie Burton and illustrated by Olivia Lomenick-Gill. I won't talk too much about this one because it actually is coming out at the end of October, and so I don't know if I'll do a review, but I'll definitely review it like on Goodreads and StoryGraph and Galley and everything. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, is all I'm going to say about it. So let's move on to the next one, which was North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Okay, so I feel like this was one of my first Victorian novels, especially since college. So obviously I did the Jane Austen, which I still need to do the videos about. I read all the Jane Austens this year, like one a month, and then I wanted to find other like kind of more historic, like literary figure that are women. So I thought I'd go with Elizabeth Gaskell. Next, I'm gonna fall into the Bronte sisters. So I picked up North and South. I'd watched a TV series years ago, and I had like this idea that it was very much like, it felt to me like very much like a Pride and Prejudice, but based during the Industrial Revolution. And yeah, reading the book, I feel like it was exactly that. So it has a lot of meat. Like I said it in my Victober TBR, Victorian novels are long. Like some of them are short, but some of them are very long, and this was super long. Like the first half I was like, oh my goodness, this is never ending, new characters, new situations, and I was like, what is all of this? But it really is building a world, which it really pays off in the second half, and you really get attached to all of these, and it really forms the personalities of the characters. Like it's not just like, ooh, flashback to that one year when something happened. Like things are happening as you read, and it's so well done, and I loved it. I did like the relationship a bit less. Obviously than Pride and Prejudice, that's what I'm referring to. Obviously it's very different, but it's a bit similar in the whole like pride and arrogance and like miscommunications and all of these things between the two main, like, I guess, protagonists that are, you know, love interests. That said, I did really enjoy it, and I enjoyed the way it ended, and yeah, I just thought it was great. It was a great almost first foray into Victorian literature, and in October, as I've said in my Victoria TBR, I will be reading loads of it, so it'll be interesting to pursue that and see where that leads me. Next, I read Witchy Coffee by Erin Ritch. Okay, so how to talk about this book. The first thing I want to acknowledge is, and I'm going to put the cover right here, is that whoever made this cover did this book wrong to me, because it looks like crap, okay? I really don't. And it's not to say that the art looks like that. It's that to me, this looked like a cheap book, and it looks like it's going to be crap, okay? I'm not going to lie. The book, obviously, it's like the way it's advertising it to me. So the book wasn't Shakespeare. You know, it wasn't like Margaret Atwood, but it was really fun, and it wasn't what I expected. It reminded me a lot of Practical Magic, I think I read some reviews that people had said like it reminded them of Gilmore Girl, like that kind of cozy coffee feeling, small town romance, like just this whole feeling. And I think I have to agree, and that's why I kind of enjoyed reading. It was really quick. I mean, it was just nothing substantial to it, so it was really quick to read, but I really just enjoyed it, just for like this really, for what it is, you know, like a sweet little thing, and it's just following this little coffee shop that's trying to put on these events and everything because there's a new potential chain that's about to open in town. And the weird thing with the magic, it doesn't really come up that much, but when it does, I mean, I won't reveal it, there's something at the end, but I was like, okay. But it's that kind of book. That said, I think I would recommend it if you like kind of women's fiction that's a little bit quirky, a little bit romantic, something, yeah, easy, like I said, like a Practical Magic / Gilmore Girls kind of vibe. I think you'll enjoy this. Then I read The Editor's Wife by Clare Chambers, which was another arc. Actually, loads of these have been arcs. Sorry, I'll mark them in the description, but loads of them have been arcs. I think it was in August, I almost finished all my arcs, and I was like, oh, let me look at new titles. And then I requested like 10 and I got all of them. So I had loads of arcs to get through. And The Editor's Wife came out in September, so I thought I'd prioritize that. And I read it, and it was really good, actually. I had some issues with it. Like I feel like it's a feminist trope, or is it feminist or misogynistic? Anyway, like trope to have the wife. Like I listen to the Bechdel cast, and they're always like, his wife. Because it's always like someone's wife and not like a person as her own entity. And I feel like this, I don't know if it was trying to use that as irony, but because the main character was a male, I didn't feel like it was ironic to me. It was very much like he falls in love with his editor's wife. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but that said, the characters were developed brilliantly. It goes between like almost like two time periods, or he's looking back at that time period of his life when he was younger and fell in love with her. And yeah, I was surprised by stuff that happened, which I feel is rare nowadays, to be surprised by like tropes in books sometimes. And so I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it. This was my first Clare Chambers. I saw that she obviously read, I think it was The Small Pleasures, that was nominated for the Women's Prize, but I probably will look at her other books as well, because I just really enjoyed the way that this was written. Next was another arc, which was An Ordinary Wonder by Buki Papillon, and this was an audiobook NetGalley arc, and it was narrated by Joa Ando, who I know more recently from Bridgerton. She did an excellent, an amazing job narrating this book. I always want to see, especially because she did a lot of the accents. This is based in Africa. She did a lot of the accents, and I was really wondering how it was written, because I always enjoy seeing if the performance was influenced by the way, like in North and South, I was listening to some audiobook about it, and obviously it's written in the kind of northern speech pattern in England, and obviously the actor was doing that, so it wasn't just like a choice. So I kind of wanted to see it, but anyway, this book was so interesting, very heavy. Like at some point I was struggling, especially like I think the first half to 3/4, really heavy stuff, like a lot of physical abuse. Basically it starts with a character, Otto, who is intersex, and he kind of doesn't really understand what that means, and he keeps being beaten because they think he's basically like an aberration. However, the ending, like the way that it develops toward the ending was just so beautiful. Like the ending made me so happy. And I mean, it's maybe a bit of a spoiler, but it goes toward like acceptance, and yeah, it was just really interesting to hear of her journey, and obviously understanding of her own body and who she is as a person, and who she always knew she was inside as a person. And it was just, yeah, really beautiful. So as a whole, I really enjoyed it, but there were moments that were really difficult, and yeah, I don't think I would reread it for that reason, but I would definitely recommend it, especially if you'd like to read and discover more. Like it reminded me of Hercule Barbin by Michel Foucault, which was about like hermaphrodite, which I feel like is not an appropriate word anymore. That's why like there's intersex. But also the thing is that I don't know if the author is intersex, and like if this is his own voice, because I feel like these stories, I mean, I want to read about them. Like I think they deserve to be out there, especially in the book you realize how much representation matters, because he just thinks he's alone basically in the world like this, right? So people can, you know, see different representations of different people and different bodies and everything. But I don't know if this is his own voice, so that's the one caveat I want to put. I don't know, and obviously it's always nicer when it comes from someone who has that personal experience, but yeah, I can't talk to that. Oh, starting to run out of daylight. Okay, we're at the last book though. So it was Running Smart by Mariska von Sprundel, which was another arc that I got on NetGalley. It was a book about running, obviously, and I picked it up right away because I'm on like this, I guess, quest to read books about running by women. So I picked this one up, and it was it was so interesting. I don't want to talk too much about it because I will make a video about all these books that I've read, but it is basically the science behind running, and it's trying to not expose but show all the different research that's been done according to different things, like about compression socks. Do they help? Do they not help? Same thing with the different shoes, like for supination and all that stuff. Hydration, like all of these things that, you know, people have told you about. Like you're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll take this advice, but loads of them don't actually have a basis in science. So it's so interesting to read it. I will talk about it more another time, but I really loved it. If you're a runner, you will probably really enjoy reading this and kind of opening your eyes, or maybe understanding stuff that works for you. You're like, oh, that's why, like, oh, you know, that makes sense that this works, it doesn't work for me. So yeah, big recommend for runners. All right, that's it. These were the 12 books I read in September. Let me know if you were intrigued by any of them, you know, like let me know what you think, or if you've read any of them. And thank you for watching, and see you next week. Bye!